DOI embarks on a caravan tour ahead of Transformative Agenda 2021 event. WHO member states commence 74th session of World Health Assembly. TRC give report on visited places of interest. These and more coming on the World Today newscast. Hello, this is the World Today newscast with me, Mariama Cham, and thanks for joining us. People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism, DOI, has embarked on a caravan tour within the Greater Banjul area ahead of the party's Transformative Agenda 2021 program to be held on Tuesday. Part of the DOI's 2021 Transformative Agenda obliges every Gambian and African to envision and pay heed to the clarion call of the pioneers of national liberation in Africa. As a result, DOI says it is envisioning the birth of a new era of a sovereign republic with a sovereign people who are architects of a destiny free from ignorance and poverty. Here is an excerpt from Halifa Sallah, the leader of DOI, during the caravan tour.
When it comes to people renting in other people's houses, including all the sufferings Gambians are going through, tomorrow we will tell them how to get rid of all those sufferings, and whoever wants to be a leader should tell people what you intend to do to alleviate their sufferings. Now if you don't do that, then it means people will lose hope in you. This is why we are doing this, so that before we enter to where people will elect us, we will tell them what we will do if we are elected into office.
Now, the World Health Organization with its member states has on Monday commenced the 74th session of the World Health Assembly with a theme ending this pandemic, preventing the next, building together a healthier, safer and a fairer world. Addressing the 74th session, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says effective and global vaccination is needed to end the pandemic. Let's in this report.
The World Health Assembly is held annually to determine the policies of the organization, supervise financial policies, as well as to review and approve the proposed budget. This year's assembly, that will run through 1st June 2021, is expected to brainstorm and provide further recommendations on how to end the current pandemic and prevent future ones. Presiding over the virtual meeting attended by delegations from WHO's 194 member states, the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, said vaccine production must be increased in both middle and low-income countries across the globe.
At this year's World Health Assembly, we are urged to end this pandemic, prevent the next one, and build a healthier, safer and fairer world. This has to be our agenda. This requires that we attend with some urgency and purpose to the huge divide in the provision of COVID-19 vaccines to the peoples of the world. Millions of people in wealthier nations have been vaccinated, while billions of people in poorer countries still wait and are still vulnerable to infection, to disease, and to death. We all need to work together to correct this situation.
To UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, if the right measures are put in place, the world will quickly recover from the devastating impact caused by COVID-19 pandemic. Guterres called on world leaders to take a bold decision in ending the global pandemic.
The entire United Nations to support these efforts. Second, we must bolster primary health care systems and universal health coverage. COVID-19 cannot be seen in isolation from the fundamental problems with our health systems: inequality, underfunding, complacency, neglect. With the right primary health care systems in place, we will recover more quickly from this pandemic and prevent the next before it takes hold. Our efforts to recover from COVID-19 should not come at the cost of other essential health care, from women's reproductive services to children's vaccination and mental health coverage. Third, we must prepare for the next global health emergency. Robust primary health systems are a start, but they are not enough. I fully support the bold recommendations in the recent report by an independent panel for pandemic preparedness and response. The world needs political commitment at the highest level to transform the existing systems through an international coordinated all-of-government and society approach. The WHO must be at the heart of global pandemic preparedness.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization's Director General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, recommended health workers around the world for the momentous work in the fight against the deadly pandemic. The WHO chief updated the Assembly on the current situation of the pandemic.
Although we have lost so many health and care workers already, we will lose many more as long as the pandemic rages. Almost 18 months into the defining health crisis of our age, the world remains in a very dangerous situation. As of today, more cases have been reported so far this year than in the whole of 2020. On current trends, the number of deaths will overtake last year's total within the next 3 weeks.
The World Health Assembly is the main governing body of the WHO, comprising 194 member states. Every year, delegates from WHO member states come together to agree on the organization priorities and policies, as well as focus on a specific health agenda prepared by the Executive Board. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Desise.
Now, in a bid to supply vehicles with compressed natural gas, Egypt's first mobile fueling station kick-started operation in the North African country amid rising demand. The country's Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources says the initiative is part of the petroleum sector's desire to provide new outlets that will supply cars with natural gas. Details in this report.
The Egyptian-designed vehicle is hitting the streets for the first time in the Middle East and North Africa. The station has a capacity to fuel 500 cars in 12 hours and the ability to double the amount when needed. It can also store and transport 5,000 meters cubed of natural gas or CNG. This fueling station, like many others to be established soon, are meant to serve the growing number of Egyptians who are benefiting from a government scheme to own natural gas-powered vehicles. The mobile station is spearheaded by state-owned Gastech company.
The people now is going very well for converting cars for CNG. Now we have in monthly 5,000 vehicles converted to gas, and also the companies for assembling the vehicles change the vehicles from gasoline to gas to working by CNG for the customers. Because the customers always require the vehicles working by natural gas. There is some places in Egypt there is no networks for natural gas. We can locate this station, mobile station, in these places.
About 80,000 Egyptians have opted to convert their vehicles to use natural gas in the last year, and more are signing up.
Natural gas is cheaper, saves money and gives an efficient performance for the car. The idea is very good, especially that there are not many stations when traveling. I hope we see more of this everywhere.
The company is planning to deploy 10 more mobile units in addition to 700 new conventional natural gas stations in the next year. Egypt has been benefiting from its huge gas discoveries over the last few years as more people convert their vehicle engines from using the expensive fossil fuels to consuming the much cheaper and more abundant natural gas.
And in an effort to combat irregular migration, the president of Tunisia, Kais Saied, has called on the European Union to find a solution to the root cause of irregular migration. But the EU official says most irregular migrants in Europe will be given a return decision. Details in this report.
President Kais Saied urged European officials to adopt a comprehensive approach to irregular migration that goes beyond security solutions and addresses the root cause of this phenomenon. The Tunisian head of state emphasized the importance of combating poverty and unemployment and promoting development policies.
Unlike in the past, now we all need to look for a new way of tackling irregular migration. It's useless to treat the consequences without understanding the cause of this phenomenon. The main reasons are certainly linked to social and economic situation. Irregular migration from Tunisia was non-existent some 20 years ago, or very limited. The visa to Europe was not even required.
EU Commissioner for Home Affairs noted that most irregular arrivals from Tunisia will not be eligible to stay in Europe. In fact, irregular migrants will be given a return decision. Ylva Johansson added that this agreement will destroy the business model of the smugglers.
But it's equally important to also prevent irregular departures, to manage migration, border management, to fight these organized criminal groups that are arranging and making a huge lot of money of putting people or convincing people to get into these boats on very dangerous journeys. We have to fight the smugglers and prevent irregular departures.
Italy's interior minister announced that Tunisian authorities are willing to repatriate thousands of irregular migrants who have reached Lampedusa after departing from the Tunisian coast.
Tunisia has welcomed Italy's proposal to establish a direct hotline between our two countries to contain and block these irregular departures.
The EU Commissioner for Home Affairs and Italian Interior Minister declared that the stability of Tunisia and the post-pandemic economic recovery are necessary for stability in Italy and the EU. Europe is committed to supporting Tunisia by contributing to development and to job creation in order to reduce irregular migration.
Outbreak of COVID-19 has an unprecedented impact on the Ugandan economy as the country witnessed a decline in remittances. The amount of money sent from abroad by Ugandans served as a major source of the Ugandan economy, contributing to at least 5% of the country's gross domestic product. The remittance inflow is projected to decline 14% by 2021 compared to the pre-COVID-19 levels in 2019, according to the latest estimates published in the World Bank's Migration and Development Brief. More in this report.
The latest World Bank reports indicate that remittances from Ugandan workers abroad fell to $1.1 billion in 2020 from $1.4 billion the previous year. The drop was caused by the global COVID-19 pandemic. Now, hundreds like Esther Namaganda are bearing the brunt of the shortfall. Little has been coming through from her partner who lives abroad.
The lockdown comes, it's not working, I'm not working. Yeah, the money reduced. Some weeks he could not send money. So he could send like every after 2 weeks, yet before it was on a weekly basis.
Uganda is one of the top African countries whose household reported transfers from family members working in foreign countries. The remittances mostly come from the Middle East, where unestimated are employed. And with many migrant workers losing their jobs during the pandemic, economic experts believe that money from abroad will take a while to recover.
The nature of Ugandans in that economy are not getting back their jobs. There's a possibility that probably based on their level of education, based on where they are, based on the sectors they are in, they may not be the first to get back their jobs. In that case, it could get.
Remittances to Uganda account for at least 5% of the country's gross domestic product. The current downturn could have for the economy at a time income and tax revenues are needed most.
This money, remember, comes directly to Ugandans, and some of this money is invested, some of this money is used to construct, so all this translates into jobs for ordinary people. So if you don't have this money there, then you have a challenge.
That challenge will certainly be difficult to overcome in the short term, but longer term, there appears to be some hope. While the COVID-19 pandemic paints a grim picture on remittances for Uganda, many think it could change for the better. Experts predict the increased COVID-19 vaccination and the opening up of travel will turn around the downward curve on how much can be sent back home.
And that decline of remittances in Uganda, which is set to be caused by the pandemic, will take us to a break, and we'll be back with the rest of the news on the wall today. Don't go away.
Following the announcement by the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, of the dates for the general voter registration scheduled from the 29th of May to 11th July 2021, the National Council for Civic Education, NCCE, reminds the public that voter registration is an integral part of the electoral process, as it is key to franchise as stated in Section 39 of the Constitution, and hence a civic right and a duty for all eligible Gambians. The NCCE therefore encourages every eligible citizen to fully participate in this crucial national exercise, as it is the basis for any credible and participatory election. The National Council for Civic Education informs the public that to register and acquire a voter's card in the upcoming general voter registration exercise, one has to prove your Gambian citizenship by producing one of the following documents as stated in Section 12 of the Elections Act: birth certificate, ID card, passport, or alcalo or district chief attestation. As the Gambia prepares for this very important national exercise, the National Council for Civic Education reminds the public to stay away from any altercation and refrain from the use of abusive language, provocative actions, intimidations, thugs and physical confrontation at all times, as these contravene the laws of the Gambia. The public is encouraged to follow due process to seek redress when the need arises during the period to ensure that peace and stability prevail throughout the process. Voter's card is your key to franchise. Register to vote and vote wisely. This message is brought to you by the National Council for Civic Education, NCCE, with support from the United Nations Development Programme.
The pride we take in our brand, the work we put into constantly change the landscape and elevate real estate in the Gambia, it's compared to none. From inception, our goal was to add value to the beautiful Gambian landscape. That's why we are proud innovators of community estates. Kololi Sands is an exceptional piece of work, tailored for ultimate convenience and luxury, to bring you an element of finesse that is rare but unique in its own. This is also our pride and joy, and we welcome you to the exquisite beauty right here in Kololi and right here on the waterfront. Kololi Sands, feel the ocean breeze at your doorstep.
Welcome back, and you're still watching the World Today newscast. Now, the Truth Commission has on Monday briefed Gambians after embarking on a side visit to places of interest in the country. According to the lead counsel, Issa Fall, the Friday visit is part of their mandate to find the whereabouts of disappeared persons and to know the locations that were mentioned at the TRC by perpetrators. Our reporter Binta Jal, who has been following the development, files in this report.
After a site visit to places of interest on Friday, the Truth Commission explained to the public in detail about what they have gathered during their fact-finding tour. Their entourage include representatives of victims, the press, and the Truth Commission officials. According to the lead counsel, the visit was not to discover human remains or bodies, rather it was meant to give the public and the Commission an understanding of the nature and condition of these places. Lead Counsel Esa Fall said the first point of call, which was the Tangier NIA Detention Center, was where political activist Ibrahim Solo Sandeng was killed and buried. Ndul Cham was also reportedly received from one of the cells there by the junglers before killing him.
The site that has just been showed is the grave in which Solo Sandeng was buried. I should say secretly buried. And this was meant not to be discovered by the Gambian people. Fortunately, the evidence came out. Mr. Thomas Gomez was one of the forensic officers who, working for the police, who exhumed Mr. Sandeng's body.
Mr. Fall further explained where the team headed after Tangier and what happened later.
This is the beach side of the riverbank of Santamba Forest. You could see Omar Jallo explaining what happened in this particular place. He explained to the commission. One of the Ghanaians who were being killed at Brufut escaped. They took the victim to Yaya Jame's farm in Santamba. And at the river bank that you just seeing, they brought the Ghanaian down, and Fire Manjang blew off his head.
Lead Counsel Fall added that the Truth Commission visited other farms of the former president, but according to him, the farms were so vast that it could be twice the size of Banjul.
This is where Tumani Jallo and Abdullah Gay were killed.
Jalnom dinkirati ye Tumani Jallo ning Abdullah Gay fadaming.
Fingen di gis ni fofu lañ rayé Tumani Jallo ak Abdullah Gay.
Inside Yaya Jame's farm. Omar Jallo indicated.
Omar Jallo ñitandiko.
Omar Jallo won nañu ne.
That Tumani Jallo.
Ko Tumani Jallo.
Ne Tumani Jallo.
And Abdullah Gay.
And Abdullah Gay.
Ak Abdullah Gay.
Were executed on that spot.
The TRRC is an independent Gambian institution with a mandate to conduct research and investigations into human rights violations committed under the presidency of Yahya Jammeh. The Commission further aims to prevent a repetition of the violations and abuses suffered under the past regime by making recommendations to government with the Never Again mantra in mind. For IFK News, Binta Jala.
South Africa is witnessing an increase in the theft of rare indigenous plants despite the lockdowns and restrictions imposed by the government. South African police have arrested at least 18 suspects for the possession of a single endangered species last week. More in this report.
The COVID-19 pandemic has taken a huge toll on South Africa's education system. Hundreds of teachers, for instance, have lost their lives as a result of the pandemic.
COVID-19 has really accelerated the loss of lives among our teaching staff in a manner that we have not seen before. So that has also created a major problem because we have lost teachers with experience.
A number of school children have also succumbed to COVID-19. Mhlanga says the Basic Education Department is continuously introducing new measures to protect educators and learners.
We have sought to increase the number of people who monitor adherence to the health and safety protocols in our schools, because the danger is that learners would forget and start touching each other. So we needed to make sure that there are enough people on the ground to remind them to keep social distancing, but also to make sure that all the sanitizing stations are working and fully equipped so that they can use them as and when there's a need to do that.
Another measure that has been introduced is the suspension of all contact sports in schools. A Council of Education Ministers noted that despite interventions, contact sports events are still contributing to the spread of COVID-19.
Initially, there were reports of 2 schools, but at the last count, there were 8 schools in one province where reports came indicating that sporting activities had become super spreaders. We don't want that to happen.
South Africa uses a rotation system where students alternate days at school. Mhlanga says there's currently no intention of closing schools entirely, a move that is supported by UNICEF.
They need to learn, they need to be protected from mental health impact of, being withdrawn from schools or learning environments or playing environments. We want to make sure that we do not lose a generation, by keeping them away from becoming, productive members of society in the future.
UNICEF is a United Nations agency responsible for providing humanitarian and developmental aid to children worldwide.
About 100 protesters have gathered to attend a Free Palestine Solidarity March in the Gambia, moving from Churchill's town to Buffer Zone. The peaceful march, according to organizers, is to show support to the people of Palestine following 11 days of conflict with Israel. As Binta Fati reports, the protesters were holding banners and flags as they chant, "Free, Free Palestine." Let's take a listen.
End persecution! End persecution!
The Solidarity March was organized by Gambia's Free Palestine Peace and Solidarity Movement, FPPSM, with the hashtag Free Palestine. Scores of Gambians from different walks of life marched from Churchillstown to Buffer Zone to show solidarity with the people of Palestine. The protest comes as Egypt broke a ceasefire that was reached on Friday between the two sides appears to be holding. Alhaji Mamadou Kamara, one of the organizers, frowned at the delay of the international community, particularly the United Nations and human rights movement, in condemning the action of Israel.
Palestinians are facing oppression and bombardment by Israel over 10 days. So we see that it took international communities, most of them UN and most human rights movements or organizations, it took them 10 days to come and condemn this inhuman behavior. So we see as brothers and as people and as humans also, we see it is important for us to add our voice to those who condemned it and stand with Palestinian people.
Despite the ceasefire appears to be holding, to some of these protesters that alone is not enough.
No, the ceasefire is not even enough. Palestine has been going through this for 73 years. I think we have more than enough. The world should stand with a unified voice instead of being discriminatory, instead of being selective, instead of operating double standards. What Israel is doing is a war crime, and a war crime is subjected to prosecution. The ICC should take the appropriate line of action to ensure that Benjamin Netanyahu and the Zionist government are brought before a competent court of law to address this issue.
Other protesters joined the crusade to call on international community to encourage peace and ensure the protection of the rights of all humans. The conflict between Israel and Palestine began on 10th May.
But I will express my disappointment with the Gambia as the host of the International Human Rights Office. I believe the Gambia should have been the first country to come and condemn what the Israeli people are doing to these Palestinians. But it takes the Gambia about 2 weeks before I get a statement from the government, which is a little bit disappointing, though it's better to be late than never.
Israel's 11-day airstrike left at least 279 Palestinians killed, including 69 children and 40 women, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. 12 Israelis were also killed in Palestinian rocket fire from Gaza Strip. While more than 90,000 Palestinians were displaced from their homes, much of Gaza's infrastructure, including civilian buildings, were badly damaged. For iAfrica TV News, I am Binta Fati.
And the report by Binta Fati on about 100 protesters who attended a Free Palestine Solidarity March in the Gambia ends the World Today newscast. Up next is Gambia 24 with Sohna Tunkara for more national news. And I am Mariama Cham. Thanks for watching and bye for now.
They say we slept in one world and woke up in another. This global tragedy got humans together despite our social distancing.